It's premature. I think it's premature to have that conversation. No one can deny that Q1 was poor. Q2 actually seems to be not nearly as good as we all thought in terms of the incoming data. Nevertheless, I do think that you still have at least a few years before we have a real conversation about a recession. And the way that we get there is really straightforward. Typically, what takes down a recession are significant imbalances, particularly at the consumer level. And the one thing that's really lacking at this point are those imbalances. So the consumer, we would argue, is actually in pretty decent shape. Now, again, I recognize that growth has been disappointing by any standard, but the lack of imbalances really for us is compelling. So we would argue that this probably has at least a few more years to run.
You can make a case, perhaps, but I think they'll probably wait till September or even December. I think you need to have consistent job growth of over 200,000 per month and wage growth that is clearly accelerating. So, we're getting close. This is a bit of a parlor game, June, September, December. From a macroeconomic perspective, I think it's irrelevant. But if I had to pick a date, it'd be September.
I don't think it is, and it's not doing so for good reasons. So on the one hand, a precarious situation in Greece is getting worse, and the probability of an accident in which governments, both in Greece and the rest of Europe, lose control is high. On the other hand, the markets are rightly and understandably focused on the amount of cash coming in. Josh tweeted earlier today that the authorized buybacks in April at 141 billion were the highest ever. Dividends are going up. We're seeing central banks, China, ECB, they're going to become even more dovish, and M&A activity is picking up. So I think the markets are focused on the amount of cash coming in, and they believe that Greece is going to be contained and isolated. On the US equity market, yes. European equity markets, a little bit more vulnerable. European FX, the euro, more vulnerable. So it really depends which market you look at. I think the catch is impacting mainly the US market right now.